I love Star Wars. I have since I was a kid. My dad showed it to me. I watched it. I loved it. I've grown up with it. It's amazing. It means a lot to me. I've spent money on lightsabers and movies and toys and everything. So today I wanted to share a little bit of my opinions and theories I have for the upcoming Rise of Skywalker, since it is the end of everything, the end of 9 movies, culminating together. So I wanted to share my thoughts about that and like a really cool story that I kind of devised, which I don't think will happen, but if it did, it would be amazing. There have been a lot of rumors of a lot of test screenings for the movie going really bad, and there being like as many as like 9 different endings that they were testing with audiences, and not a lot of them are doing very well. So I just kind of wanted to throw in my 2 cents because I think it'd be fun, and I wanted to talk about Star Wars anyway. So going into episode 9, here's what we know. We know Palpatine is back. We don't know how. We don't know how because he blew up in the Death Star in episode 6, right? Darth Vader picked him up, threw him in the big, scary hole, and then you never see him again. So, it could be cloning. It could be stuff like that. It could just be he's got crazy old Sith powers. It's also important to think about, he built General Grievous, or he was part of that, and, he designed Darth Vader and all of that. So, what gross, monstrosity has Palpatine saved for himself? So, we don't get to see what he looks like in the most recent Episode 9 trailer, but we do get to, kind of see, the back of him in a chair, and it's, raised up, so we'll see how that goes. We also know that there's, Palpatine's new army with all those Star Destroyers coming out of the water in some of the shots of the trailer, and it looks like they have, big cannons at the bottom of them, and people are thinking that is, Death Star tech. So those Star Destroyers are basically planet killers, and they're crazy huge and everything, and there's, a bunch of them. So that's scary. We also know that the Rebellion is, at the end of Episode 8, the Rebellion is, 30 people. So it needs a lot. It needs to come back. And we also get these weird lines and shots of C-3PO, sacrificing himself. He's got red eyes and getting hooked up to something, and he says he's taking a last look at his friends. So maybe he's uploading his conscience into a ship or something, like how, what's her name, L4, I think, did in Solo. Maybe something like that. I'll talk about that in a second, but, so C-3PO is dying, so we don't know anything about that. So here is, going here on out is my opinion, or just my theory, I guess, built off things I've heard and other theories, taking bits and pieces of it from what I think would be the coolest ending to Star Wars. So here we go. With that whole C-3PO sacrifice thing, we obviously know that they need to build up the rebellion, and in those trailer shots of C-3PO, we see droids in the background, which are the Separatist Alliance battle droids that were used in the prequels. So imagine, since the rebellion is so low, they get word that there's a secret stash or remnants of the droid army. So what they're trying to do is reawaken the droid army to fight back against the new Empire and the First Order. So maybe what C-3PO is doing is sacrificing himself or putting himself into the mainframe of all the droids or something to basically be the entire resistance. But why C-3PO in this? In Attack of the Clones, C-3PO, it's a goofy gag, but he gets put onto one of the battle droids on Geonosis. So maybe what they're looking for when they're in those shots when Rey and Finn and Poe are on that desert planet, maybe they're looking for a specific thing to install into C-3PO to reawaken those memories and protocols, because he got brain wiped between 3 and 4, and I don't know if he didn't get between 6 and 7, but he got brain wiped, so he wouldn't have any memory of that stuff on Geonosis. So maybe what they're doing is trying to reawaken that in C-3PO so he can reawaken the entire droid army so they can fight against Palpatine, which I think would be really cool. And that would be a really cool conclusion for C-3PO actually sacrificing himself to do stuff, because all he's really done is like bitch about statistics. So yeah, that's how I think that they might go about building an army for that. Now, since they're bringing back Palpatine, I think I don't. Okay. The movie is called The Rise of Skywalker, right? So what I think that insinuates is the redemption arc for Kylo Ren, or Ben Skywalker. So that it needs him to come to the light, and that is the rise of Skywalker. So what I think would be a crazy cool way for that to happen would be Anakin appearing as a Force ghost and talking to Kylo Ren. Since all Kylo Ren's been doing is like trying to find Darth Vader artifacts, like his helmet and different parts of him, and he worships his grandpa is basically what he worships. Like that's what he wanted to be as Kylo Ren, as he, commands the First Order and has that mask. That's the whole reason he shattered it, because he felt like he let down his grandfather. I don't know exactly if Kylo Ren knew he turned to the light side or not, but if Anakin tells him that could spark something within him and redeem him. I also think that this would be really cool, because if Anakin is the one to bring him to the light, that could be Anakin restoring balance to the Force, which is what the prophecy was for Anakin Skywalker all along. So it's kind of a really awesome roundabout way to bring in that meaning for both Anakin and Kylo's character. So that's what I think about that. I have notes, so I'm moving on now. Next is the whole business with Rey, because people say she's a Mary Sue, people don't know where she's coming from. Like, it's been 2 movies, and, in the second movie of the original trilogy, that's when you find out, oh my god, Darth Vader is a Skywalker, and that's why Luke is so special, and we haven't found out what makes Rey special, if there's anything at all. I mean, Kylo Ren says that thing about Rey's parents, that they were nobodies, but we don't know if that's a lie. We don't know anything, really. I mean, people could have, I guess, said the same about Darth Vader saying that I'm your father could be a lie, but we don't know. The thing is, it's still a big mystery, because that's a very unsatisfying answer, and it may have meant something to Rian Johnson, but as J.J. Abrams comes back in, he could kind of retcon that by saying that it was left very vague. Let's say that. So, imagine this. We all know that Rey is super strong, and people call her a Mary Sue because of that, and it's dumb. But imagine this. The story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's become a meme. It's what Palpatine talks about in Episode 3. We don't really see anything with it, other than maybe that's why Palpatine lived so long, is because that's all about, like, life and stuff like that. But imagine this. It says right here, I have this line from the speech that he gives to Anakin in Episode 3. Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. Imagine that Palpatine used the strongest midichlorians to create Rey, which explains why she is so strong. But why would Palpatine do that? Why would he create the strongest potential Jedi in the world to defeat him? Now this is a little weird. But it was to become a Force God. Now, a lot of the Force God stuff is Legends, but it is shown heavily in the Clone Wars, and that's canon, the TV show. So in that, there's the Father, who basically controls the Force, right? He's like an immortal, super strong being. And he has the Son and the Daughter. The Daughter represents all the light, and so she's like crazy light side abilities. And then there's the Son that has all the dark side abilities, and there's this whole lore in the Clone Wars where they end up dying and stuff. But basically, to become a Force God, you need to have control over the dark and the light. So, we already know Palpatine is super strong in the dark side of the Force, so maybe what he did was created Rey to use her light side power to become a super strong evil Force god. Now, this could also play into the theme of darkness rising and the light to meet it. So, Order 66 was obviously designed to kill all the Jedi, to give Palpatine all the power and basically become the Emperor, so no one could really oppose him. But imagine, the whole reason he did that was to wipe out all of the light side users that he could, so that the dark rises. So, one light side person could become the strongest and rise to that level of darkness, so he can siphon all of that light side power to become like the strongest being in the world. So that's a really cool way to tie that theme back into the events of the prequels, which I think is really cool. And that's backed by what that darkness rises and light to meet it is a Snoke quote. Which, by the way, don't even get me started about Snoke. I don't know anything about Snoke. I don't know how he would play into this, but that's what I think would be really cool. That's one way it could happen, where he just kind of siphons power from Rey. Or, imagine this. Rey becomes evil, which we have seen in some of the trailers, but I imagine that's probably just a Force vision, because I just don't think Disney would do it. I just don't think that they would make Rey completely evil. It'd be really cool. And there's a lot of hints that Rey has a lot of dark side power, which is shown in like her training in Episode 8, where she's talking to Luke, and Luke is like, "Wow, you chose the dark side like immediately." Like when she went into the like scary dark side pit thing, that was like a mirror of that weird dark side area on Dagobah. But imagine Rey becomes evil, and the rise of Skywalker is Kylo Ren becoming that light. And that was Palpatine's plot, was for Kylo Ren to basically turn to the good side so he could use that power to become a Force god. So it could either be Rey or Kylo in this scenario. I think, I personally think it would be Rey. That would be a little more impactful, because that's how I kind of planned my finale, is around Rey staying good, which I think is probably the more safe bet. But anyway, the finale. So they have the whole story where they're trying to get that part for C-3PO so they can raise the rebellion. But it's going to culminate to a final battle, basically. Just like Episode 3 did, just like Episode 6 did. It's got to be cool, or else it's all going to be for nothing. So what I want it to be is a big battle between Rey and Palpatine. Palpatine. Maybe this is happening while Anakin is talking to Kylo Ren. Maybe that's where all this is happening. Like, he doesn't know who to choose or who to follow, so maybe that's when Anakin is talking to him. This could also be happening with some crazy climactic battle between Palpatine's new army and the First Order versus the Rebellion and the droids and Lando and all those side characters like Rose and Finn and stuff, just like it's crazy war military battle intercut with the more Jedi Sith conflict, which kind of culminates all that is Star Wars, because there's movies that, like Rogue One, which is all like the military and the political, versus, Episode 3, which is the whole purge of the Jedi. So anyway, Rey versus Palpatine. Now imagine this. They have this crazy lightsaber fight, or maybe she's fighting like his mech or whatever the heck he's in, and while this is happening you see visions of Jedi, of the Force ghosts coming to help Rey. So like you see them with their lightsabers out and they're fighting with them, and maybe there's also visions of ghost Sith, which haven't been shown. We don't know if that's real or not, but maybe they're like some crazy Sith ghosts. So imagine while Rey and Palpatine are fighting, you also see Qui-Gon Jinn fighting Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Yoda and Count Dooku and maybe Asajj Ventress or even Darth Revan, or any of those like side characters, all culminating in one big fight. And they're fighting, and while the rebellion is taking down Star Destroyers, the Sith are using their Force abilities to slam down Star Destroyers like it's Like it's Force Unleashed, and there's crazy demonstrations of Force abilities with Force Lightning and Force Push and Choke and everything. And it's the biggest conflict that's ever happened between Force users. And it all culminates in the end, and they all Force push at each other. The big, like, crazy Force explosion, and the screen goes white. And it's silence. And then you see Rey on the ground. All the ghosts are gone. All the Sith, all the Jedi, they're gone. She looks up as she sees Palpatine start to unplug from his, like, life support chair. He hobbles over to her. He takes out both of his lightsabers and holds them in an X, just like Anakin did to execute Count Dooku. And he whispers, "Your journey ends here." And all of a sudden, you hear the sound of a lightsaber igniting. And through his chest comes a purple, cross-guarded lightsaber of Ben Skywalker. The only Skywalker to suffer the pains of the dark and have been able to redeem himself in the light. He's achieved balance and gained a purple lightsaber to destroy the ultimate enemy of the galaxy. Imagine that. That would literally blow my mind, or whatever. So that's just sort of a plot I came up with. It's messy, but I think it needs to have basically the same appeal of, in Endgame. Endgame is a perfect example of that culmination of all those movies coming together. They did it perfectly. They had things from previous movies that were unanswered come together, and like hints of Captain America with Mjolnir and all that stuff, and Tony Stark's sacrifice, and it needs to have that. It needs to be that flashy, because basically what Marvel did was all that Star Wars has been doing, except over the span of like 10 years opposed to like 30. Or 40 even, because 1977 I think was the first one. So I just think it needs to have that. It needs to encompass everything. It needs to have a crazy fight in the end, and it needs to have some sort of conclusion. So anyway, that's what I think about how episode 9 could go. Do I think it will happen? Probably not. Especially that Force Ghost stuff. I mean, that's a lot of actors and stuff. I do really hope the Anakin part happens, because I think that's really necessary for Kylo and making him engaging. And I know it's hard because a lot of these characters, they're underdeveloped, and we're still adding more. We're adding that Dio robot and that one black lady. I don't know her name, but she's part of the story, and we don't even know anything about Rose or Finn or Poe or anything. So I don't know why we're gonna keep adding characters. But anyway, I just hope it's good, man. I'm gonna be so sad if it's not. So anyway, that's it. See ya.